Hey folks, this is me, Vishwas, and I'm the host of this podcast. A lot of times we bet on things that is a new technology, a new practice, and new jargon in the market, but we sometimes forget that we need to rethink before we adopt it in the culture. I think somewhere down the line, people are playing the game of possibility instead of playing the game of plausibility there. Possibility and plausibility has a lot of difference. And in a similar way, every security practice has its own pros and the cons. Guess what? There's a lot of things that goes bad in the technology that you really are keen on adopting. And I think Sanjay Singh has always been talking about not just best practices, but he has also been talking about some worst practices that you should never do. And also some things like he has been seeing a lot and lot of use cases from different industries, from different set of sectors that you can really think about. So don't worry about it. This podcast is going to give a lot of insight, which is going to help you in your security journey. Which is going to help you in SRE, DevOps practices, whatever it is. And welcome, sir. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Means a lot.
No, thank you, Vishwas. Thank you so much for having me here.
Sure. So let's start with the journey of, are we adopting software engineering in a right fashion? Because a lot of times when I see, you know what, you just do this language, you know what, do this, that language, and it becomes something very critical to make decisions faster and quicker. And also, it's taking a lot of time in adopting a new technology as well. So, are we doing software engineering and the DevOps practices right?
So to me, whether it is, language A or language B, ultimately what problem that you're trying to solve for is more important, right? Or what's the business problem that you're solving for? Of course, technology helps you, achieve that. Technology, in my opinion, it is an enabler rather than just being the technology, person or, a particular technology. Now, talking about the DevOps, I think DevOps is more of a practice, more of a culture as such, right? And every organization, in my opinion, has a problem, a particular problem area, and then they want to solve it. Some of them falls under that. What if we follow a particular set of practices and we tag that as it's a DevOps practice? But in my opinion, it's basically Dev and Ops working together, right? And the other target state, which again has now picked up, is how do we reduce the ops and do more of a dev, right? Even within DevOps, right? With the DevOps team, per se, right? Where we build a solution, we build capabilities, which can enable, the dev community or dev teams faster, right? And going, pick up the pace faster. And that is what, in my opinion, the DevOps enables basically the organization to pick up the pace, faster time to market, enabling dev teams to do things themselves without having a dependency on someone as such. So in my opinion, that's what the DevOps is. And that's where, in my opinion, industry is headed towards.
Sure. I think somewhere down the line, when I look back at your journey, you have seen different industries, different sectors, but still you've been a person who sees how scale differs. So everybody has a different definition for scale, but I wanted to know, what is the definition of security that every organization need when they're adopting it? Because more we think this tool, that tool, that's fine, but more we think about the security practices, probably somewhere down the line we are not really solving our technical depth, but we still talk technology. So how should an industry think about DevOps anti-patterns and the technical depths to be solved easily? Because a lot of times these are the things that are overlooked in a market.
Yeah, certainly. So, again, as I said, the tools help you achieve something, right? And every tool has, some kind of capability. It's just that what's your problem, the problem statement, and based on that problem statement, what kind of tools or the method that you're adopting towards, right? So, for example, what you mentioned about the DevOps, the security best practices. There are some of the standard practices, adopted by industry. So having that kind of awareness and having the right policy and procedures in place, right? That, for example, if you're say encoding or hard coding your username and password in your application file, that's definitely not a good practice, right? So some of these things, having the awareness and having the policy in force, right? That if by mistake I, as a developer, say for example, hard code, say clear text username and password in my application file, and if I have, or if there is a way through which this is getting caught in the pipeline itself, then the policy is basically enforced as well. That even if I make a mistake, may not be intentional, but if I make a mistake, my tool will help uncover those kind of issues or challenges. So that's my opinion about adopting a tool or having kind of best practices or policies.
I think there is a lot of things that goes behind, but I want to know SRE and the value of treating operations problem as a software problem statement. What is a real IT transformation that we need to witness today? Because SRE ka matlab, you have a tool that gives you all the logs, you have a technology which is going to help you in giving a suggestion. And I'm like, it's not going to work the same way. It's not the manual or an automated testing wala scenario. But somewhere down the line, we are not thinking software engineering problem as an operations problem statement. So you can talk in terms of Games 24's perspective of treating an chaos or an anti-pattern or anything related to practices, or else you can also give an insight about how industry need to perceive every software engineering problem statement as an operations problem statement.
Yeah, so as I said, the early adoption, or the other term is shift left, right? If you have that approach in your company or in your teams, that helps a lot, right? Like the best practices in the sense when you are developing a software, some of the best practices defined, and it is being enforced in early stage, so that you don't have to kind of go and react to a particular situation, right? And a lot of times, the way we have defined SRE and DevOps here is the SRE is more of a site reliability engineering or the service reliability engineering, more of a, hey, the problem has happened and we are trying to fix that, right? Or we detected an issue and that needs to be fixed, right? At the same time, the DevOps, the way we have defined here, and as I said, every organization has their own definition. The way we have defined DevOps here is DevOps is actually getting the future ready, right? All the new platform that we are building or some of the things that we have built, which enables the dev teams going into the self-serve mode. So if dev team has a requirement, say, for example, an infrastructure to be delivered or provision, you don't have to talk to someone in DevOps or SRE team as such. You go to a self-serve tool and provision the infrastructure on your own. And it also gives you, the visibility about how much it is going to cost to the company. So up to that level of visibility. So there it is defining the ownership as well as removing the dependency of any other team as such, right? So basically the role of the DevOps here, what we have defined is creating or building the platforms which helps the dev teams using these platforms in a self-serve way. And when you come to DevOps, basically you come to DevOps with a new feature request, or maybe if there is a bug in the platform that this tool has built, but not like for operational activities that, hey, can you reset my password, or can you restart my stack, or can you give me this kind of stack? Those things are taken care of by the platform that we have built or in the process of building out.
Sure. So now what you talked was all about a well-architected framework, because cost, performance, accuracy, whatever it is, it's still going to be the same. But now I want to ask you a question regarding application security today. How can a CVSS, and many more standards that we are defining today measure the security of a system and also make us really evolve? Because fundamentally we are metricing out many things, but there are some things which you can't really measure in an organization. So how should organization rethink security when they are standardizing some things on the one side and they're actually not able to measure many things on the other side?
Yeah, so I think for measuring, in my opinion, you need to have right tooling in place, right? And before tooling starts, the right mindset that what all do you want to measure? And measure could be on anything as such, right? It could be, as I said, it can start even from cost. That, hey, I'm accountable for cost and I'm measuring that. I'm accountable for my code quality and there is a way to measure my code quality. Similarly, I'm accountable for security and there is a way to measure the security, the practices that I have or the standards that I have followed, right? The second part is, I think a lot of times we feel that, hey, what if this goes wrong, right? And security, what if there is some security loopholes or challenges? My opinion is again, none of the companies in the world can claim today that, hey, we are 100% secure, right? It's like when it happens, do you have right tooling in place to detect that? And at the same time, do you have right people to remediate that? No matter whether it is an outage, whether it is a security loophole, whether it is sudden surge in cost and things like that. It's like how quickly can you detect with adoption of tooling and having the right process and procedures in place. And then, in the end, you have right people to take action on those, right? Who can understand what's the anomaly basically, whether it is cost or quality or even security. How quickly can we detect any anomaly as such and take any action on that?
Sure. In the world where Kubernetes is everything, I think probably you have to rethink what your YAML files can do. Probably there is a lot of out out for the public credentials out there somewhere down the line that's there. So you have to be a red teamer in your own DevOps team. So that's how it is. So the question is all about games 24/7 is all about scale. Like when we just talk about what a gaming platform is, it's not like on my system. It's like somewhere down the line, it's running on a cloud, and anything can happen. And probably everything that you mentioned as a chaos can really happen on the same day. So now I want to ask this question based on the scaling platforms today are playing with the trade-off. Either you get the performance or else you get the security of it. So sometimes you have to compromise both to keep your systems up and running. You might incur a lot of cost. So my question is all about scaling platforms today are playing a lot of trade-offs with respect to the development process. What is it all about when we talk about infrastructure today? Because it's not Kubernetes coming and scaling out, but Kubernetes is also highly misunderstood technology today. So how should an architect think about distributed system? How should an architect think about the scale today? And in your day-to-day life, what are the best practices that you feel like this is what I think when I think about scale in any of the problem statements that you have been? So what is scaling and how should an architect think scaling today?
Right. So I think you asked several things, and I think security was more of an implicit thing there, right? So, I mean, if I have to answer cost versus security, I would take security, as the number one priority, right? I mean, cost can still go higher. You can still, maybe incur maybe a little higher cost. But if your security is compromised, the cost goes up exponentially, right? So the focus is definitely a lot on security. Anything or everything that we develop, how do we ensure that it is 100% secure, right? Right, so that's definitely one. Talking about scale, I think it is a more of a predictive model, right? Based on the history, the system can tell you that what's the scale that you need to be at, right? There are, of course, in our case, we have IPL and World Cup and these kind of events where the traffic goes up exponentially, but then we have visibility into that and we prepare ourselves for those kind of events. Talking about the scale. Now, talking about the Kubernetes, I think it is going to change the way I think the compute and the underlying infrastructure is working. In my opinion, the infrastructure is going to be more of a commodity going forward. You don't care whether it is in one cloud or versus another cloud. I mean, you can even have multi-cloud solution deployed, and then Kubernetes can manage that. So I think it is still evolving. I think it is still in very, very early stage of adoption, but I think it is going and rapidly it is growing up.
Sure. I don't sometimes believe in automation. Like, not automation can really solve everything. It's okay to have Ansible pipelines. It's okay to have GitHub actions in the hand, but somewhere down the line, it has also been an impact in my life because the moment I see Terraform is not just an tool which is used for infrastructure provisioning today. It's something like intention as code, what not Terraform can do today. So basically there is policy as code and governance as code, which is also coming up in the market. And of course, if you're an AWS user, you are bound to just give out policies beforehand when you start provisioning the infrastructure as well. So what do you think about the way in which we are coming up with a high-tech solution that is going to influence a lot of DevSecOps decisions that we are going to make today? Because strategizing automation is an art of DevOps. That's absolutely fine. But sometimes we might have to overlook on the security, or else this process can really help in adopting security right. So, are there any practices that you feel, apart from the intention as code, policy as code, and the governance as code, making an impact in the world of security? Because your DevSecOps pipelines can break anything today. So, how is an automation looked in the world of DevSecOps, and what are people betting on today when they think of automating all these steps that they are looking back at?
Yeah, so in my opinion, automation is nothing but a double-edged sword, right? I mean, you make one mistake, and the automation. See, the beauty of automation, it can go really, really fast. But if you have something misconfigured or something is not properly configured, and then you're running automation on top of that, in a matter of minute, in a matter of second, you may have misconfigured devices and several devices, right? I mean, when I started my career, the footprint used to be so small, the traffic used to be very limited. But now with the growth, right, you definitely need larger infrastructure setup, the larger architectural setup as such. And automation is definitely the key, right? To scale that in an automated fashion or in much rapid fashion. But at the same time, if you do not pay attention to how your automation is going to work, right? How from where the input is coming from, for the automation to kick in, then you may be inviting for the larger problems. So automation, of course, for the execution part, but I think for the planning part, of course, you need to have human involvement for sure, and that helps in a bigger way, in my opinion.
Sure. So now we have something like you want everything in hand. So companies like, my system is minting a lot of money. How can you get me a scalable, secure, and a governed infrastructure? So it's not possible for a startup, because a startup has to rethink cost, rethink availability, and rethink their customers again and again. So you have seen different problem statements. You have also been part of different teams that work in different scale together. So what's your suggestion for any startups that are going to start their journey in the scale, and how they should not overlook security and also the governance part? Because everybody says, you know what, let's implement Kubernetes first, but their caching strategy is so bad at the end of the day, and it's not going to work out. So what's your suggestion for a new startup that is thinking scale, governance, and security?
Yeah, so I think again, I go back to the planning exercise, right? You may have a smaller footprint today, but if you have planned your things properly, multiplying that setup becomes easier. And if you have the right procedure and policies in place that, hey, this is how I am going to have, for example, visibility into the cost. This is how I'm going to have visibility into even the security, right? So no matter whether it is one stack or 1,000 stacks, right? It is the replicated setup. So whatever security that I have applied in stack number one, the exactly same security is applied in stack number 1,000 as well, right? But as I said, having the right, the model built in the early phase, right, and having the visibility about the scale, how it is going to be in the future, that kind of planning and visibility, in my opinion, it's very important. If you do not pay attention, then it becomes a bigger issue later, and you may have to re-architect a lot of things, which will have a larger impact to overall cost, your time, effort, and even to your business.
Sure. My last question is all about, people still fear cloud adoption. Like, I don't know why, but some still have it. But what are the fundamental understanding that is required when you are thinking DevSecOps and cloud? Because not like I still have that one annotation in the market. Like, people always say, if a security company is now giving you a cloud offering, just go for it. Come on, man. Azure is good. AWS also has their security engineering team, and everybody is rock solid on their security SLAs, SLI, and SLOs. So people still have that fear of cloud adoption, because it's been years of journey that they have built that startup or else that institution, and now they don't want to lose any of the control that they have on the data that's flowing in and out of the system. So what should be the fundamental understanding that anybody requires when they go for a cloud adoption? And also something like you can also talk about like there is still fear going on between, can we adopt an open source software? Can we still adopt an enterprise software? There's still a lot of debate that goes behind. So what should be the fundamental understanding when an institution or an organization tries to involve the cloud adoption, and what should their security strategy start from? Like I'm asking you, where should their security journey start from?
Yeah, so I think you've asked three questions. One is the cloud adoption. Second is the security. Second, third is I think getting ready for the future, right? So, cloud adoption again. See, any cloud provider, they are the custodian, right? They cannot take your security controls or what kind of policies that you have defined, right? They are the infrastructure provider, and it is now up to you how you want to secure your environment. If something goes wrong, you cannot go and question them that, hey, my infrastructure or my setup is compromised, because they have given you all the liberty and it is up to you how you are defining that, right? So it is 100% in your control. So as I said, you need to have right procedure and policies in place. You need to have right people in place who can think about the future, who can think about the scale and the security, right? So these are some of the things which are coming in mind.
How should we think open source and the enterprise software adoption? Because there's a lot of difference that goes behind these two, right? So how should we rethink software that is open source and software that is enterprise?
Yeah, I think there is another term, build versus buy, right? Something we should build, or whether you should go for buy model. I think in my opinion, again, it depends on case to case. I generally take the hybrid approach where something which that where the community can help you, support you, and you have capability in-house, where you adopt open source tools and build something, with the help of open source tools. But there could be situations where if you have to build, it is going to take a lot of effort. Moreover, you may not have that expertise, or you do not want to have that kind of expertise within your organization. And in that model, it is always better to go for the buy model, where you know that whatever you are buying, one is it is value for money. Secondly, it is the expert who is actually taking care of it. You don't have to break your head. While you are focusing on your business, your these areas are taken care of by experts. But something that you can build on your own and you have expertise, there I would recommend that go ahead with the open source tools.
Sure. So now the last question was all about like, where should they think security in the SDLC or else even in the cloud adoptions? Because people think security is something like, let's rig up all the system and now we think security. So now my question is all about like, where should we start rethinking security?
No, so I always say security first. Anything and everything that you build, always think about security. Like, for example, even up to level like if you have, say, if you're bringing up a new service, right? What kind of ports need to be open? For example, if this application is, say, listening on, say, port 443, other than 443, you don't need anything else, for example, right? So just allow only thing which we definitely need to allow, but block everything else. So basically what I'm trying to say is that start from security. Security should not come to the end that, hey, I'll develop first and then I'll think about what are the security loopholes or where all I can apply security controls. Have that in your mind first, that anything and everything that I develop, I will have security running in back of my mind. Even up to a level of, you may have heard a lot of stories where someone uploaded the source code with credentials to public GitHub accidentally, right? And then that becomes the easy door for the attackers to their enterprise setup. Some of these things, again, the awareness is very, very important in my opinion. And that's when I say that start with security first. Understand about the security loopholes, challenges, what can cause the problem or can have a negative impact to the overall brand or image of your organization, and then start from there.
Sure. I think this is a set of insights where a startup can also think about security, because you need not have to be a ninja style guy. You have 10 different OS on your MacBook where you're sure shot, if I overdo something, everything is going to crack down, where my laptop is never going to be in one piece. So that's how it is. So you need not have to be in that sort. You can still go ahead with the automation. You can still go ahead with a lot of DaaS and SaaS strategies that are being architected from the cloud service providers. I think thank you so much, sir, for such great insights. Means a lot. When you take your time, come back to the show and give us such great insights. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Vishwas. Thanks for having me here. Have a good one.
Sure, sure.